Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today, harnessing the full capabilities of Microsoft 365 Business Premium, Part 4. Today, in the final part of our webinar series, I'm joined by technical cloud specialist Ollie Drew, who will deep dive into the full capabilities of Azure Virtual Desktop and provide two demonstrations around the setup and management of AVD and also its integration with Azure. So this webinar marks the fourth and final installment of our series of webinars we've hosted around the capabilities of the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started today. Feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section at the top of the chat throughout the webinar. We'll collect the answers, and then we've got a dedicated Q&A session at the end. If we can't answer them on the spot, because we've just got Ollie today, then we'll answer them after the webinar and then share those answers with everybody. The webinar is also being recorded, so after the webinar is completed, you'll receive a copy of the recording via the webinar chat. Just a bit about Nviron before we kick off today. For more than 30 years, we've been empowering SMB customers with IT services to increase end user value and enhance their productivity. Based in Cheshire, we specialise in delivering Microsoft solutions to our customers, and we work closely with Microsoft for a long time. Previously, we were a Microsoft Gold partner, and since the partnership status changes, we now hold Microsoft Solution Partner status for Modern Workplace and Azure infrastructure. So what will we cover on the webinar today? Before Ollie gives us a deep dive into the capabilities of Azure Virtual Desktop, we'll just spend a few minutes exploring why Business Premium is Microsoft's go-to license for SMBs. We'll look at the key challenges small and medium-sized businesses face in a hybrid work world. And then we'll look at why you should trust Microsoft for your security. We'll then pass over to Ollie. He'll take us through a couple of demos. The first on getting your AVD environment set up, and the second exploring how to manage AVD and its integration with Azure. We'll have a quick, probably 5-minute break between those demos, just for comfort break and get a brew. And we'll close out with a Q&A session. So whether you've decided to make remote work options permanent across your business, or just want to have more options when it comes to connecting teams and customers, the right digital tools can be a huge competitive advantage. We see some continued challenges around remote work. For example, 43% of remote workers do not feel included in meetings. It can be challenging to balance the needs of remote and in-person team members, and in many businesses, the future will increasingly see a mix of both. Leaders fear that productivity is negatively impacted since shifting to remote work. While studies show this isn't necessarily the case, you need increased visibility and connection to help get the most from your team. Additionally, more employees are using personal devices at work. That's great for engagement and productivity, but it's important to have a good solution for securing those devices and preventing data loss. Regardless of how large or small your business may be, security is top of mind for everybody. However, small and medium-sized businesses often face a situation in which they are vulnerable to the same threats as enterprise organizations, but do not have the same level of specialized security staff and tools to combat those threats. We've seen a 300% increase in ransomware attacks in the last year, with more than half of those targeted at small businesses. Not surprisingly, leaders of those businesses see cyber threats becoming a large area of business risk. With the average cost of these data breaches exceeding $100,000, it critically makes sense to consider investing upfront in higher levels of security. At the same time, in this hybrid world of work, you need solutions that are built to protect your business wherever your people are working. Not to mention being easy to use, so it doesn't take up time from your core business activities. Together with the right tools at hand, we can help grow your business. The Microsoft 365 solution is designed to equip business owners to respond to these key challenges. It can help you secure your business with technology that you can trust, and it can help you reduce your costs. Microsoft 365 Business Premium brings together the key capabilities you need to enable work from anywhere. It allows you to collaborate using Microsoft Teams, secure your identity, data, and devices. It can help you provide remote access and virtual desktops. And as a customer, it eliminates the need for multiple point solutions and helps reduce your operational costs. How many of you use in Office 365 provision an alternative endpoint protection solution like Bitdefender or Sophos? Microsoft 365 is available for small and medium-sized businesses via 3-tiered subscriptions within the Microsoft 365 Business Suite. Microsoft 365 Business Basic is a lower-tier subscription offering basic web access to Microsoft 365 applications such as Exchange, Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, as well as more traditional apps such as Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. The Microsoft 365 Business Standard is the mid-tier subscription, offering virtually the same applications as the Business Basic subscription, but delivering these capabilities as desktop client applications. And Microsoft 365 Business Premium is the top-tier subscription and brings together 3 key Microsoft areas: Microsoft 365 productivity apps, as available in Business Standard, Microsoft mobility and security capabilities, such as Microsoft Entra, Defender, Intune, and Windows 11 for Business. All these capabilities are accessible as desktop client applications. Microsoft 365 Business Premium brings together multi-layered security that is integrated with your productivity and collaboration tools so you can run your business from anywhere with peace of mind. There's protection across identity, device, and application, protecting identity and access against lost or stolen passwords with multi-factor authentication, as well as controlling who can access your business data with conditional access. The protection continues to the devices that access your data, whether company or employee owned, using Intune policies. The ability to remotely wipe lost and stolen devices and protect work data on personal employee owned phones and tablets. The apps that are used to access work data can also be managed using Intune app protection, policies to block work documents being saved in personal apps like a personal share. Additionally, advanced step protection capabilities help defend against phishing and other cyber threats by checking links and attachments in real time within Teams, Outlook, and OneDrive. With DLP and AIP, you can automatically classify and protect sensitive information and resist forwarding or copying of sensitive emails and documents. There are lots of technology benefits within Microsoft 365 Business Premium, and today we're going to deep dive into the capabilities of Azure Virtual Desktop. I'll now hand over to Ollie, who's going to demonstrate how to configure and manage Azure Visual Desktop and its integration with Azure. Over to you, Ollie.
Hi guys, I hope you're all doing well. If you could just give me a quick thumbs up to indicate you can all see my screen fine, and we'll get kicked off. Okay, brilliant. Thanks for that, Graham. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll just give you an initial overview just to tell you what we're going to be covering today. So ideally, we're going to be going over identity integration, so getting your AVD set up with Entra and perhaps a local existing Active Directory, multi-session host pools, so getting yourself set up so you can have multiple users accessing a particular host pool, or perhaps even just a dedicated one-to-one user to host relationship. We're going to do a little bit on profile containers and FS logics, and we're also going to create a remote app as well. So in case you want to distribute just an application to your AVD environment as opposed to a desktop, that's going to touch on that as well at some point in the first half. So before I get cracked on with any of the sort of technical stuff, what I want to do is just quickly talk about prerequisites and what you require. So obviously you require an Azure tenant. They can be set up pretty easily. There's obviously the question of doing a bit of landing zone work and prepping yourself security-wise. But the basics of what you'll need is a subscription. So you need yourself a subscription within Azure. At the moment, you guys can see we've got this demo subscription here, and we use it basically just for these demos, things like conditional access, AVD, Defender, and so on. I'm going to go into there. Just going to show you the subscription, And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through to the IAM. I'm also going to show you the fact that you'll need the appropriate level of access. Now, I'm a global administrator on this tenant, so that gives me access on a tenant level. But what you need is either owner, preferably, or maybe just contributor if that's what you can get on the subscription in question. So if you need to do that, you can always go through to the subscription. You can then go to My Access and you can view My Access. What we can see here is that I am an owner on the subscription. I'm also user access administrator. So I've got full details, any access I need to make changes to groups, resources, VMs, and any other content that we require for this demo. So what I'll do now is I'll just close that down, reload the page. Hopefully we don't get too many of these today. And I'm going to go through to Azure Virtual Desktop, which can be found just using the top search bar. There we go, Azure Virtual Desktop. So what you can see in front of you right now is the admin page. Now this is the container for basically all the components you'll need to set up your AVD environment. We've got areas such as host pools. So these are the pools in which the VMs are going to sit, people will be given access to, and most of your sort of content can be controlled from. We'll have application groups in case you want to share out certain apps via a remote desktop to users. We've got workspaces if you want to essentially contain your apps in certain work environments, be it for, say, accounting, operations, or other sort of departmental categorization you'd like to do. And we have a few other sections, including users and so on, which will show us local users that will be stored for the AVD environment and so forth. So what I'm going to do is go back to the overview page, and we're going to get cracking on with beginning by creating a host pool first. Now, it is possible to create a lot of these components individually and put them together in a resource group. However, especially if it's your first time working around sort of AVD, I would recommend using a oh, sorry, we got a message saying that someone can't see something there. Bear me 1 second, guys. What's can everyone just double confirm you can see what's going on my screen? Don't want to might be something on your end, but perhaps if you want to just rejoin the webinar and close Teams, maybe it's a connection issue. What I'll do is I'll just carry on then in that case. So you've got individual components, you can string them all together, or you can use one of the wizards. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use the host pool wizard just to get you guys familiar with the experience. First of all, I'm going to put it on the demo subscription, which we're currently using. I'm going to put it into our AVD resource group, which I have already created in here. If I have a little look through, resource group AVD. The host pool, I'm going to call it something inventive, demo pool 2. And I'm going to set the region so that it is appropriate as well. In this instance, we're going to go with UK West. I try and keep the regions consistent, obviously, because there is charges for communicating within certain regions and outside of them. So we're going to set any of our resources to UK West in this instance. Preferred app group type, we're going to keep that as desktop. And the host pool type will be a pooled experience. You can see a setting here that says breadth first, depth first. I'm going to go into that in a little bit of detail later on, but for now, I'm just going to keep it on breadth. And the maximum amount of users per session, I'm going to set that to 3 for now. And what we're going to do next, so that's just your initial setup points, is we're going to go to virtual machines, and I'm going to add some virtual machines into this resource group. So first of all, I'm going to give them a session host name, AVD. It's an Azure virtual machine. I'm going to go down to UK West. Go. Leave that as is. Trusted launch virtual machines. There's a couple of other settings here. There is quite a lot of ground I'd like to cover today, guys. So what I'm going to do is just quickly get through this process so that we can have a look at some of the other components. You obviously have the option to select an image. You can create your own images for AVD if you need sort of custom content. However, there is already a sort of pre-generated set that Microsoft has available to you. So I'm going to go for Windows 11 Enterprise multi-session version 21H2. and I'm going to have the version that has Microsoft apps on it as well. Number of VMs, I'm going to say just in this instance, we'll just have one to keep things simple. Now, obviously, you can have multiple VMs within a host pool if you're looking to sort of do load balancing, cater to large amounts of users, but still have the granularity of having multiple machines that you can spin on and off to sort of affect your cost and so on. Okay. Go through to Workspace. You have an option here as well to register the desktop app group. I'm not going to do that yet. I'll touch on that in a second. Not going to enable dial sticks or tags. I'm going to go to Review and Create. Now what I'll do is, because I've already got a host pool spun up, so I'm not going to set that one. I'm just going to go through and show you the one that we have here. So long story short, once you've gone through the wizard and you've spun up the first host pool, it gives you a few things. It'll give you your Azure resource groups, which will be used to keep basically all of your sort of resources, be it VMs, network security groups, any of the other content. You'll have an Azure AD domain services account that's attached to that, FS Logics containers, a storage account, which is used to keep all of the data for the pool, host pool with any of the VMs within it, and then application groups, a virtual network with a network security group, and some Azure AD groups to contain some of those components. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to quickly go down to the remote apps section. Bear with me 1 second. Through to application groups. And if one wanted to add a remote app and you want to have that shared out to specific users, what you can do is you can add it via the application group section. So you can go through to create, and I'll just show you the options here. We won't actually initiate one now because there'll be a sort of a chargeable event with it, but I'll just show you what you would do in this instance. So you pick your subscription. You would use, in this case, the same resource group. I can store that in there. You can perhaps, if you'd like to sort of compartmentalize things more, you can use obviously other resource groups if need be. You select yourself a host pool. Now, because this host pool doesn't have any VMs in it yet, it won't actually go through to the late stage, but I'll just show you the process at least. You give it an application group name. So I could call this Teams app, like so. You can go through to applications. You would pick one out of the list like so. Then you go into your assignments page, and what you can do is obviously you can set a security group to distribute this application to any of those AVD host pools that are associated. So what I'm going to do, just because we'll need it in a second, is I'm just going to very quickly make us an Entra group that we'll use for some of the other content. Go through to groups on here. I'm going to go to new group. You guys will be probably most likely relatively familiar with creating groups, so needn't be any explanation here. Test group. So leave out description and members. I'm going to assign myself in this instance in here, so we've at least got someone in there. Assign onto myself. Go to select, create. And now we have a security group that contains just myself, and it's called test group 2. So what you can then do is you can go in, you can assign these applications individually. So test group 2, click on that, and then click on select. And as I mentioned before, there is the option to put these applications into a workspace so that they can be compartmentalized, so you can have applications that are associated with, say, accounting or operations or development or various other tasks, and then you can distribute them accordingly to users. There's obviously the option for diagnostics and tags as well. Then you can go through to review and create, and you can actually share out that workgroup or that application. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go back to the Azure Virtual Desktop landing page so we can discuss a few of the sort of pertinent settings that you might want to use whilst you're here. So what I'll do is I'll just go through the host pools, and I'm just going to go to this host pool here that Bernard has kindly set up for us in the past. There's a multitude of different settings that are available here right off the bat that you can have a look at. Amongst them is properties. So if there are any components that you would wish to change, about the way the host pool is configured, you can do that after it's been created. It's not set in stone. There is the flexibility to do so. Useful little features like start VM on connect. So in this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable that. Really useful feature to have. If you've got users and they're expecting to use a VM within a certain time period, however, perhaps it's been shut down by admins and someone's forgotten to turn it on again, you can enable start VM on connect so that it's booted up instantaneously and your users always have access when they require that. There are a few other components in here with regards to networking and so on. I'm going to cover networking in the second half because there are essentially just a few little security tweaks you can make that really help enhance and stop people from being able to access who shouldn't be able to access your environment. Also should be noted is the RDP properties as well. So if you're looking to control the way that users connect, there are multiple methods in which people can connect to an AVD environment. They can either do it via remote desktop, which you would do traditionally just using the remote desktop controller, or you can do it via the web. So it can either be deployed via remote desktop connection, it can be done either by Intune or some other application that can pre-configure that for users, or they can access via a portal that looks relatively similar to this. This is the client side of the Windows Virtual Desktop portal. And you can actually fine tune some of those connection parameters a little bit further if you would like to. One of the things that I think is really useful is this setting here, Microsoft Entra single sign-on. So in an AVD environment, people can use, localized accounts if they'd like. But for security purposes, it's much more effective if you can have everything under sort of one house, essentially, and they can use their own Entra credentials, which they use with the business, to authenticate into the AVD environment. And it provides a single sign-on experience for the other applications as well that are containerized within. Should also notice that you have session behavior controls too. So things like allowing your client to automatically reconnect, and auto detecting your sort of network and bandwidth settings. You can play around with compression and video playback as well, if that's something you'd like to do. And now there are also features with regards to device redirection as well. It is important to consider how the hardware of the thin client interacts with the AVD session. Realistically, what we want is an environment in which the thin client is essentially just a mouse and keyboard connected to a screen, and as little data is being stored or passed onto that device as possible. By design, AVD does not transmit any of that data onto the local device, therefore meaning that the connection, provided it's secure to AVD, is the only area in which sort of data is being transferred through. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just go back to the overview on that page there. And I'm just going to show you a couple of other features with regards to automation and tasks. So as I showed you before, spinning up the host pool is just a few clicks through the admin center. It's nothing too complicated, at least initially, but there are a few other components that you can start to look at. One of them being saving yourself some money via automation tasks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through to a virtual machine. I'm just going to show you something that you can set up on all of your devices or VMs if you should so wish. I'm going to go through to AVD file. I'm going to go down to automation, down to tasks, and add a task. Now, it should be noted, if you want your VMs to automatically turn themselves off, that's a standard feature in Azure. It's not chargeable, and you can do it on any of your machines. However, if you'd like to get a bit more specific about timings, and especially if you'd like them to be automatically turned on, which of course is pretty much required if you're auto turning them off, you can do automation tasks. Now, I should say automation tasks are a chargeable service. However, the cost of the charge is fractional compared to the amount of money that would be saved by shutting the VM off and on and so on. It's a few fractions of a penny or so per task in some cases. So in our instance here, what we'd like to do is we've got the AVD environment, and people should be accessing this, say, between 9 o'clock and 5 o'clock. With regards to the scaling plan, I'll just answer that at the end, Steve. If I just get through this part first, we'll answer the questions with regards to scaling just at the end, because there will be a point on that. So what I'm going to do now is set up a initial power on moment. So I'm going to start the virtual machine. As you can see, we've got Azure and 365 services already signed into and configured, so they're available here. I'm going to go through to configure. Task name will be startup. Start time, I'm going to set it to begin tomorrow. I'm going to set the start time to be 9 in the morning. Oops, sorry, that's correct. That's the next section. There we go. 9 in the morning. Time zone, standard time, interval to occur, and frequency. I want this happening daily. You can also put your email in as well, should you wish to have notifications for the VM being started up. And then what you would do essentially at the end is click create, and you have yourself an automation task that starts the VM at 9 o'clock every day. And as simple as that, what you can do is you can also go and you can power off the virtual machine. So you can get the same thing set up, go through to configure. It's a similar process. You just put the end time of your day in there available, set your time zone intervals and so on, and the machine will power off at the specified time. And that can be done on a group level as well. So you can have it done for sort of host pools and multiple machines. You should note this works exceptionally well with things like sort of VDI hosts, stuff that's not being used out of hours. If you've got machines that are running things like SQL or perhaps a domain controller and they need to be on all the time, or they need to perform sort of backup activities at night, it might not be appropriate in that instance, and that might be a machine that needs to run constantly. You should also note that if you do this effectively and you have the machines powering on and off, outside and inside of business hours, it will almost always come out cheaper than even the most discounted reserved instance. So it's really worthwhile getting to grips with and understanding what components in your environment could do that. So what I'm going to do now is just very quickly touch on a section to do with availability and scaling. We don't have all the time we'd need to be able to actually go into full depth on it today, but what I want to do is just go through to one of our virtual machines first, to AVD file, availability per scale, and just discuss briefly two of the two options here. So availability wise, we're talking about several different levels of availability that you have in Azure. You've got your standard VM, which has about 99.99% uptime just on its own. You can bump that up to local redundancy if you were to make a pair of two VMs that were scaled together. Sorry, for availability at least. It can then go up to zonal redundancy. So that could be perhaps if your data center in Manchester went down and it would then spin up in, say, Birmingham, for example, and be available there. And at the final level, you can actually go for geo-redundancy, which is, in the event of a sort of nationwide issue, say in the UK, you could have a site that's spun up somewhere else in Europe or somewhere further away. And at the same time, there is the option to set up auto scaling on these VMs as well. And what I'm going to do in the future is provide a separate demo for that, which will have all of those details, because there are a few other points I'd like to move towards if possible. So what I'll do now is I'll just go back to the admin page for Azure Virtual Desktop. Back onto there. And one of the areas I wanted to just mention before was that there's the option to fill via breadth or depth. So say you have a host pool and it has 5 VMs in it, and you have say 50 users and 10 ideally per session, and they're all sort of filtering in and logging on one by one. If you've got it set to breadth first, it will distribute them evenly across, one on the first VM, one on the second, one on the third, and so on, and then it'll do 2 on the first one, 2 on the second, and so on. That way, evenly distributing the load and allowing them all to have, the best possible performance. You can, however, if you're looking to save a bit of money, potentially do it depth first, in which case the VMs will fill up until their maximum capacity. Once that's done, it will then spin up the next one on the host pool, thus reducing the amount of active VMs that you have running at any given moment within AVD. Right, so there's just a few key points that I wanted to mention with regards to Azure Virtual Desktop. It is available via the clients on Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android. So it's full featured and available across multiple OSs. The web client will let you access remote apps from basically any modern browser that you have access to. And you get a seamless experience with any VM using sort of FS logic profiles, which will contain in the background and allow users to log on almost instantly to any of the VMs and not have to go through that sort of loading phase in which any of their data is being sort of pulled through and having to be read. And as I just mentioned before as well, you're looking at about 99.99% availability as a baseline with options to sort of increase resiliency on a local, regional or global scale. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to stop for a very brief 5-minute break. I'm just going to prepare a few other technical items. Once you've had an opportunity to, nip to the loo or grab a coffee or whatever, we'll crack on and we'll do a little bit more on security, a bit on Defender for cloud, and a little bit more on securing the AVD environment and so on. So I'll just pass.
Hi everyone. Let's kick back on with the webinar, and we'll go into Ollie's second demo.
Hi guys, thanks for waiting. So what we're going to do in the second part of the demo is we've just covered some of the initial setup for Azure Virtual Desktop, but we're going to look at doing things like backup, securing it with Defender, making amendments to sort of network security groups, and adding other sort of parameters in place that will prevent unwanted access to the environment or protect it in the case of a sort of DR event of sorts. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to the backup center. And the reason I'm going to that is because I want to enable a component from Azure Backups. We're going to need two things. We're going to need a vault and we're going to need a policy. So what I'm going to do first is go to Vault. You're met with a couple of different options here. You've got a recovery services vault or a backup vault. Now, one is obviously just for backing up, the other is for being able to pull your
Ollie,
machines
are you
back up
sharing
again.
your screen?
I'm terribly sorry. Look at that. I've run ahead and not shared my screen. Don't worry, guys. I've not got too far yet. I got too carried away. So all I've done is I've gone to the backup center, which is just here, and hopefully you guys can see that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Vault section, and I'm going to click Recovery Services Vault, and I'm going to go to Continue. And I'm given a few options here, one of which is the subscription I would like to use, and the resource group. So I'm going to go for the same AVD resource group we were using before. I'm going to give the vault a name, call it AVD backup. I'm going to set the region to be UK West, the same as our other regions. And then I'm going to go to redundancy. We're given a couple of options. I'm going to set it as locally redundant to reduce the cost in this circumstance. Encryption, you can either choose to manage the key yourself if you've got certain security requirements, you want to keep hold of that, or you can let it be with Microsoft, which is fine. In this instance, we're going to keep that as default. You can also enable immutability as well, which I know is a feature that a lot of people will want access to. And there is networking options as well. So what I'll do later on is I'm going to secure it, but in this instance, I'm just going to allow access from public networks at the moment. Go to tags, view and create, and then I'm going to create that. Now that that's been done, what we need with that is a policy to go with it. So I'm just going to close that down. I'm going to go back to the backup center. Hopefully that vault will spin up in the background. I'm going to go through to policy. It's going to be targeting Azure virtual machines, as that's what we want to copy the config for at the moment. I'm going to select the vault. Gives us a few options here. I'm going to go with the AVD backup that we've just created. I'm going to go to select and continue. It's going to give you a few options here as well. Now, I won't kick this off as we've already got a vault ready on this demo tenant here, but I wanted to show you the options. You do have two different options you can go with here. Subscription-wise, you can go with the enhanced or the standard. Enhanced obviously gives you a few things like multiple backups and 30 days operational tier retention, which are useful. However, at the moment, our base requirement for this environment, this demo, would be just to get a backup done every day and have that done consistently, so that you've got sort of security in the event of a DR incident. You can give the policy a name, test, and then you can obviously control some of the components like when you would like it to back up. Now, in this instance, obviously, you've got to be considerate of the various automation tasks you've put in place. What I might want is to have it back up daily at perhaps say, well, imagine it was automated to shut down a little bit later on. You have it backing up at the end of the working day once people have conducted, their work, and then the VMs could be shut down afterwards as well. Now there are a few other sections that you can configure here as well with regards to retention as well, in case you'd like to amend that. And then essentially what you do is you click create and you've got your policy ready. So you've got the vault with a basic backup policy that conducts it every day for a backup. And you can actually go through now if you'd like to target specific machines. I can go to AVD file, go down to backups and disaster recovery, sorry. And you can actually associate it with a certain vault as well, so that it's set there as well. What I'm going to do now is just go back one step onto the home page, because what I'd like to show you very briefly is Defender for Cloud and how that can integrate with your virtual desktop environment. So you guys may already be familiar with a few of the different iterations of Defender. This is the Defender that lives in Azure, and it's primarily responsible for protecting your platform sort of malicious access and other threats. So it's a cloud native application protection platform. And it's made up of security measures and practices that are designed to protect cloud-based applications from various cyber threats and vulnerabilities. And it generally combines the capabilities of a development security operations solution, a cloud security posture management solution, and a cloud workload protection platform. So lots of potential acronyms there. But at the end of the day, what you need to know is that Defender for Cloud provides an easy and comprehensive overview for the security threats within your environment. Now, at the moment here, it's targeting the whole of the subscription. So it's targeting a few other resources, including the ones we've made within AVD. And what I want to do is just show you a quick overview of the page. You get things like your secure score that are presented to you. You'll get various recommendations based on their severity. At the moment, I'm going to dig into the inventory so you can see that in a little bit of further detail. But the subscription in question is the demo subscription that we've been working on throughout the whole experience here. And whilst I'm just in this section as well, I'll show you an interesting component that you can enable. So you've just set up your AVD environment and you're also looking towards certain ISO standards or other compliance regulations. Well, there's actually a pre-configured list or multiple of them that are available within Azure. So it could be ISO 27001, 2013 that's available. That's a common one. And it has a multitude of different recommendations that are then checked against the resources within your Azure. So it could be things like having your backups enabled at a certain frequency, having auto patch on some of your VMs. It could be network restrictions, making sure it's not open to certain public networks. They're here by default and you can enable them. And what they will do is they will then correspond with the actions that Defender recommends you take. So you can get that enabled and you can start to work through some of your security posture, even by yourself, using some of the guidance that's available via Defender. So I'm just going to scroll a little bit further down here and go to inventory, just so you can see the resources in question within here. So we can see we've got AVD, one of the virtual machines files. We've got things like key vaults, storage accounts, virtual networks, subnets. You can target the vast majority of sort of accessible resources within Azure. And it also gives us a mixture of recommendations with a handy icon that just shows you the severity of them and how that compares to any of the sort of healthy resources within that certain component. So what I'll do first is I'll just have a quick look in the demo subscription here. And what it'll do is it'll provide me with a list of the specific components it thinks need to be remedied within this subscription. Now, you can go into more granular level looking at just specific resources if you like. But for example, we can see that Microsoft Defender for Resource Manager is not currently enabled in this tenant. And you're actually given a few options when you drill down into any of these components. Now, unlike a few other security solutions that don't necessarily house both the product and the security solution within the same environment, like Azure does with Defender, you can actually remediate things immediately by using the fix button. Now, it's a bit tempting to click on it straight away, and I would recommend you read through most of the actions and what it suggests it does. But in this instance, to enable Defender for Resource Manager on your subscription, you just need to go to the environment settings, into Defender plans, and then set Resource Manager to be on. You can see that's listed here. If you click fix, it'll do it automatically for you, saving yourself a little bit of time. Now there are other options here as well. Perhaps that's not an action you'd like to take. You can exempt it so it doesn't pop up in the future and bother you, and it's sort of taken off the secure score. Or you can even set up automation tasks to handle this sort of content in the future. This isn't something that would necessarily benefit from that, but it is an option. And you get a wealth of other information that's available to you at the same time. So I'll just go out 2 steps back, and I might actually just pick out a specific machine like AVD file. As you can see, you don't have to just go at the subscription level. You can actually look at your specific VMs and pick out individual points on them. So machines should be configured to periodically check for missing system updates. It's a similar situation here. You can actually enable periodic updates via the Defender portal here. So it gives you an automation task as well, or you can exempt it if it's something that you're not interested in at this minute in time. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back 1 step to Defender for Cloud. Just put us on that home page there. And as I've said before, you do get a list of recommendations that are available with your secure score as well. So I'll just view the recommendations. They'll be blurred out on here at the moment. But you do get a list of all those components so that you can work through them should you want to do that yourself or consult perhaps a third party to help work through those components. Right, so what I'll do is just nip back to home. There's a few more points I'd like to cover before the webinar is over. And I'm just going to go through to securing the network. So I'm just going to bring up virtual machines so we can see that. And this instance here, I'm going to go through to AVD file, and I'm going to look at some of the other options that it has available to us here. So there's networking, networking settings. One sec. Okay, so we've got a few networking settings that you can examine here. You can do it locally on the VM, but one of the probably the easier ways to go about this comprehensively is you can actually access the resource group that contains your network security group that affects the settings for that resource group. So I'm just going to go through to resource groups, go down to resource group AVD. You can see all the components that are listed in here. These are the components that are required for our AVD setup. And if I scroll down, I can see there's a network security group that is available here. Now, as it stands, I've just added this in before, so I'll just take that out so you can see me creating it. These are the network security rules that are available. Any of you with a bit of networking background, this would be almost instantly familiar, I would imagine. They control things like RDP and SSH access into the systems that are within this resource group, network security group, and they're also set by their priority as well. Priority of 100 being one of the fastest, all the way down to these, which are much lower priority and won't be executed if one of the earlier rules matches. So at the moment, what we've got is RDP on this port from any source to any destination is allowed. Now, what I might want to do in this instance is say, at the moment, it's only me managing this environment right now, and I don't want anyone else being able to access, the security settings and amend things and take control. So what I can actually do myself is go into here, just have a look at the settings. 1 sec. Give me a second, guys. Just need it to load up. Settings, there we go. Right, inbound security rules. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly add in a custom rule of our own. I'm going to set the source port ranges, keep it as asterisk, which is a wildcard, which enables any of the port ranges that are available. The destination, I'm going to keep that as any, but what I want to do is change the source up here. So I'm going to change it to my IP address. What it's done is it's picked up the office environment's public IP. It's already got that registered in there. Destination any, the service, I'm just going to keep that. I'm going to move it down to RDP, and I'm going to say allow. I'm going to put the priority to 100, and then I'm going to click that and put it on add. What it's going to do is it's going to allow RDP access from our office network as a priority rule. And what I could then do, which I won't do in this instance just in case it locks out Bernard or any other people who might want to access environment, but what I could do hypothetically is I could go through into this section, I could click deny, and then I could block RDP access for anyone else wanting to come in and make sort of amendments in this environment. And if this one at the front would always work the allow because it has a higher priority and thus would be executed first. So that's just a little point there for if you're wanting to play around with your network rules and make things a little bit more restrictive so that people don't get access that shouldn't. That's for the admin side, however. So one thing which you might find useful is to actually integrate something like conditional access. Now we can just touch base on this as we've done very sort of previously on a few webinars, only for a second. And if I go to conditional access along here, I can actually enforce MFA so that it occurs every time someone wants to log on to the AVD environment. So I can go to create new policy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and call it CA AVD, not very inventive, I know, assignments. I'm going to assign it to the same group that I assigned our host pool to. So I'm going to go to include, select users and groups, certain users and groups. I'm going to go for test group 2, assign that. So that's got myself in there as well. I'm going to go through to target resources. I'm going to keep that on cloud apps at the moment. I'm going to select the app. I'm going to select in specific Microsoft Remote Desktop. I want Microsoft Remote Desktop to be authenticated every time. Bear with me. There we go. Select that. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go down to the conditions. I'm going to go over to client apps. I'm going to click yes. So I'm going to say if you're on a browser, a mobile app, Exchange, other client, that's when I want you to authenticate. And then I'm going to go down to access controls. I say grant. I'm going to say require multi-factor authentication. Then I'm going to click select on there. And then what I'd do is I would click create on that policy. I won't enable it now because it'll lock Bernard out. But what you can do there is now a policy where if users want to access that environment and they're doing it from one of those sort of specified session hosts, be it from the web or a remote desktop, they would prompt it for the MFA as part of the process, thus securing the environment. So for now, guys, that's mostly everything I wanted to show you on AVD. I hope it's been helpful. Now, there has been some questions surrounding scaling and a few other features as well. We will have a Q&A shortly, which I'm happy to answer some questions. But if you guys want to go into any sort of further detail on some of these specifics, do give us a shout. We're more than happy to set up sort of specific demos, be it with myself or one of the consultants that can go into further detail, as I appreciate, in the sort of time window we've got, it's not enough time to be able to dig into exactly every point that you guys want to have a look at. So other than that, I'll pass back to yourself, Mike.
Thank you, Ollie. Just looking in the Q&A section now. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask? We haven't had anything posted. We've answered a couple as we've gone through the webinar. Just give you a couple of minutes to put those questions in. Well, I can't see any questions coming in the chat, so I think if you do have any questions, if you can think of anything following the webinar today, then please reach out to Ollie and also Ben Staley when he returns. So yeah, feel free to reach out and ask those questions, and we can reply to you in full. But oh, we've got a question. Excellent. So we've got a note Oliver picked up 21H2. Has there been any issues with later versions of Windows 11 multi-session?
Not that I'm aware of thus far, Liam. I've not had any particular issues. That's just the instance that's been used in the past in some of the other sort of deployments we've had. I'm not presently aware of any other compatibility issues, Windows 11 sort of multi-session that's come up. But what I can do, mate, is I can have a quick word with the rest of the team. I know they deployed a few Windows 11 multi-session options for AVD. There might be some sort of compatibility issues they've encountered. So I'll have a word with the consultancy team, and I'll just drop you a little email later on today just to confirm to see if they've had any issues with it.
That looks like it's it for questions for now then. So we'll, oh, one more, sorry. Have you got that question, Ollie, in the chat?
Yeah, I can see that. I've not experienced that ourselves, Liam, thus far, but what might be useful is to have a word with Craig, and especially Bernie, who's just done an AVD deployment for one of our other customers. I'll see what version he used, and I'll see if he's encountered blank screens in specific, and hopefully we can get you an answer to that. And if not, perhaps there's a way we might be able to help you resolve it and do some troubleshooting.
Excellent. So yeah, we will we'll close the webinar off there and give everyone back a bit of their time, and we will share the recording once once it's gone live. Should be a bit later today once Microsoft's uploaded it, and we will let you know when we look to plan a new series of webinars. Thank you everybody for joining today, and we'll look to see you on the next one. We'll look to catch up with you going forward. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys. See you in a bit.